Hello, and welcome to Yen Radio TV. This is your guest host, Skye David. You can find out more at yenradiotv.com. And this is the Twin Flame team with Skye Dunn and David Dunn on Yen Radio TV. And you can find out about us on yenradiotv.com and at skyeburns.com. That's SKYE. So today we're going to talk a little bit about emotional resiliency, and I'm going to let David go ahead and start explaining that to you.
All right. Today it's about emotional resiliency and emotional shutdown. And what that means is how quickly we can bounce back from periods of emotional scarcity. When you go through stress and certain parts of you shut down, maybe your ability to appreciate things, your gratitude for life, your desire, your hope. You know, we have these moments in our life where we go through things and we have to face resistance in order to get through it and then reap the rewards and adaptations of these experiences. So when we're looking at this, we want to divide it almost like winter versus summer. You know, when you're shut down, you're kind of like in a winter state. And when you're having abundance in something, you're in like a summer state. Everything is growing, everything's working, everything's energized. Now, the trick to becoming more resilient, being able to bounce back when you're in the winter states, is not just about what you do in those times, but also what you do in the summer states. Basically, you don't want to take the abundance for granted, but at the same time, you don't want to be afraid of or demonize the times when you're in scarcity. You want to be able to spend time in the abundant states working on things like desire and appreciation. When you feel them, when they come easy to you, you don't want to just indulge in the easiness. You want to be able to expand that. You want to increase your capacities, because when you raise your ceiling of your ability to desire things, to want things, to love things, to appreciate things, that also raises your floor. So when you're in a place where those things are hard to reach, it's easier if you have a larger ceiling because you have also a higher floor. So we want to be able to work on these things. Let's see.
Would you say that it's something like, I'm asking him a lot of questions because David has a tendency to break down things I do, break down things he does, and analyze them in depth. He draws pictures. I mean, you can look through his notebook. There's pictures. There's notes. And so things that I just do naturally and don't think about, I don't plot through them and understand them, David does. And so I often ask him questions to help me better understand what he's talking about, because I know what I do, but I don't think about it. I don't analyze it as much when it comes to this. So as I'm listening to you describe it, one of the things you were saying was like basically lifting the ceiling on it.
Mm-hmm.
But the first thing that came to my mind as you said that, I was picturing a little balloon.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how when you pour water into a balloon and it slowly begins to air even.
Mm-hmm.
I like the water analogy better. So as you're pouring water into it, it slowly expands and it's different. But if you only pour water into it to a certain level,
mm-hmm.
or if you only blow it to a certain level, then it still has all this extra capacity to expand, but it's still at that smaller size. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Well, sort of, because like when you're, say like you have that balloon, and when you blow it up at a certain point, that's its size.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it deflates, it still maintains that size, it's just not filled up now. Mm-hmm. Now, say that you spend 2 years blowing that balloon and making it bigger and bigger and bigger. It's been stretched now.
Mm-hmm.
So when it deflates, it still has the size of when it was stretched, it's just deflated. So it's like a cup, you know. In the very beginning, you can only fill like up a thimbleful. When it's full, you're fine, you're happy. But it's when you increase it, when you make it deeper and it can hold more, now you have reservoirs.
Okay, so with the balloon theory, because
Yeah,
this is making a lot, I like this. This is making sense for me now, finally. After weeks of talking about this finally makes sense in this way. So the balloon, because when it does deflate, it doesn't look as big, obviously, because there's no air in it.
Right.
So it doesn't appear as big, and it does withdraw into itself a little bit more, because that's the elasticity.
Mm-hmm.
But you can see the wrinkles from where it had been a little bit bigger, and now it's a little...
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's kind of like us.
Right.
So when we're feeling all of that good emotion, and we're feeling that, ooh, I'm feeling this good, I'm happy, I've got all the air inside me. We're going with air now instead of water. I've got all this air inside of me, and I'm like, this is great. This is great. I'm feeling it. I'm on top of the world. And then,
right.
And I lose my oomph.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I'm like a dejected, sad little wrinkled, droopy balloon.
Right.
Who still has the capacity to whoosh.
Right.
And come back up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And what's interesting is when we get all deflated, it's so hard to remember what it feels like to be fully inflated.
Oh, my gosh, it's so hard.
Yeah, and when we're fully inflated, it's so hard to remember what it's like to be deflated.
Oh, no, I remember that one very well.
Well, no, you have, like, plenty of clients who, when things are happy and everything's going on, they'll never call you.
I'm pointing my finger at you ladies and men. Just kidding.
But it's not until they get back in the deflated state when they're like, I need to work on this. Mm-hmm. I need to call the people who energize me.
Right. Yeah, because you don't think about doing the work until you're feeling the pain. Exactly. That's like I didn't think about changing my diet until my stomach tried to kill me.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. And that's where we talk about where you don't take your abundance for granted.
Okay.
And then you don't demonize the parts when you're deflated. Because some people, when they get deflated, then they start demonizing themselves. So they're like, I can't do this.
Oh, I'm worthless. I'm just a deflated, crappy balloon who can't even hold air.
Right, and this is too hard. I'll never get out of it. I'll always be deflated. And we have to have a certain edge to ourselves to face that challenge of all that stuff telling us that we're stuck.
Okay.
And that's where that edge comes in, where you can resist that stuff telling you that this is all you're ever going to be, where you can face the challenge of going through that wall, that firewall in a way, a barrier of all these things telling you that this is how you're supposed to be.
Okay.
And when we always have this thing in life where we always have these periods, these seasons of deflation and inflation, and we have to know that we are standing or striding the line of both sides. And even though we're in one at one point, there's going to be a revolution that puts it into another. But we can expand those things so that when we go back into winter later or deflation later, it's not as bad as it was before.
Winter is coming.
Yeah, winter's always coming, but so is summer.
Yes. Well, right now summer's coming.
Right. So we have that inside of ourselves. People talk of the dark night of the soul. Well, you got a dark night of the soul, but you also got a dawn of the soul, too.
Yes. You also have the rainbow in the middle to remind you that it's coming.
Right, exactly.
Just like those flowers are blooming, reminding me that summer's coming, and then the snow hit them, and they still stood up. Mm-hmm. That's another one. So the resiliency of, like, the flower can also teach.
Yeah.
Because those daffodils, their little faces were buried in that ice snow that we had.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it melted, they began to spring back up as the sun hit them. So that's what you're saying. So that would be, they take what they need from the earth. They're able to go into that deflated space. Mm-hmm. And then when as soon as that shifts, they start getting the sunlight and the warmth, and that helps them to... Yeah.
Well, and also, when we were talking about when you raise your ceiling, you also raise your floor. Mm-hmm. Well, what does raising your floor look like? In the example of the flowers you're talking about, their roots are deep. Mm-hmm. When you work in winter, you get depth. Mm-hmm. You get this strength of soul. You get this wisdom. You find a lot of meaning. Because in summertime, it's easy. It's not until you're risking yourself, where you're challenging yourself, where you're expanding your comfort zones, where you find meaning. Mm-hmm. And it's there in summertime too, because when you are sharing love with someone who doesn't have it, or you're energizing the people around you, there's meaning there, and that feeds your soul.
Well, when I'm in my deflated space, because my roots have gone down so deep, I know that I'm able to be there for other people. But I'm not always able to be there for myself because I can't even look in the mirror for myself. Although if you want to think about it, I guess I'm looking in the mirror when I'm telling them how courageous they are for stepping up or whatever. I'm still feeding them even though I don't have it for myself.
Well, let's talk about that because that's unique to you.
Okay.
You know, the thing is, all these things that we're talking about that determine whether you're deflated or inflated, what is the thing that's inflating these things, and what is the thing that's leaving when it's being deflated? These are the different elements, you know, like we were talking about: desire, appreciation, gratitude, gratification, hope, humor, compassion, trust, even sexuality. These are things that fill us up, fill us with meaning. And we have roles that are connected to certain parts of those elements, or certain types of those elements. So for you, when you're in a deflated state, you have a reservoir, you have roots that are so tied into giving to other people, for being that healer, being that helper, being the energizer, that even if you can't touch it for yourself, you have roots that go below winter and still give to people when they don't have it. And that's one of the things we want to give to people, is the ability to work in scarcity, like I often say, dig in the mud to get to your foundations and make them deeper. So when winter does come, you have a reservoir, you have roots to call upon.
So basically it's like being a prepper.
What's a prepper?
So those are the people that are waiting for Armageddon or something, but they've got their people are probably laughing right now hearing this. They have water jugs, you know, me and my 40 bottles of water. They have water jugs filled. They have like food rationing stuff that they can take care of themselves, blankets or whatever. You know, like my friends in Ireland are always saying, you got to make sure you have at least 10 gallons of water, some antibiotics, and some food on reserve at all times, because you never know when you're going to have it. So in that aspect, this is like prepping. You're preparing yourself for those moments when you don't have. It's like putting money in a savings account.
Well, yeah. Do you ever heard as a kid the fable of the ant and the grasshopper?
Yeah. One of my ancestors wrote that.
Oh, really?
Supposedly.
Okay. Well, but that's what we're talking about. Yeah. You know, when you take the paranoia out and just focus on, like, you know, it's winter time is coming, let me save stuff, let me prep, you know. Yeah, so that's why I talk about striding both lines of both winter and summer. You always want to be in spring, you know, spring and autumn, you know. Well, yeah, and a lot of people, it's for a reason. It's because they can kind of feel that it's a middle ground. It's a transition, you know. You want to be aware of your transitions.
Oh, interesting. So I prefer transitions.
Well, we are the type of people who stand on the edge of things. Okay. We live there. Like, we don't just stay in one place and then try to forget about this other one. You know, there's plenty of people who are on the other side where for them everything's scarcity, and they tell people, well, you're not being realistic. You know, you're being too idealistic. It's because they're so stuck in scarcity that they've been shut down. Okay. You know, and that's one thing we also wanted to talk about, was the long-term shutdown of these things, long-term scarcity of these elements that fill us up. You know, there's so many people that we've seen in our lives who have no desire. You know, they have no hope. You know, that's such a horrible thing, to have this long-term shutdown of hope. And actually, like, I feel like you are one of the greatest teachers for me personally about hope, because you know what it's like to go through such a long-term winter in certain aspects of your life and still hold on to that hope. And your roots for that hope are so deep. You know, like, how many writings have you shown me from being a child onto an adult, of like your dreams and hopes for the future and what that would look like. You steady breathed life into those things. No matter how hard it would get, you would dig down deep inside you and find those things, those dreams that you still had, and you would breathe life into them, and you'd make them real because you'd put them on paper. You'd share them with people. You'd read them to yourself, you know. And also you would go gravitate towards movies that spoke to that energized that, you know.
Yeah, I love a good romantic comedy.
Well, it energizes those parts, you know. How many people have told us, because of what we do, because of the life that we live, the marriage that we have, the relationship that we have, that they have hope, you know.
I love hearing that.
Yeah. I
know my sweet friend Amanda said that not too long ago, that we're the only people she's ever seen, and it gives her hope that it exists. And my dear friend Tracy, I just got a video message from her the other day that said that, and that's the last person I ever thought I would hear that from, because she can be one of the most cynical, sarcastic, if she's hearing this, she'll laugh too, snarky people I've ever met in my entire life. We've been friends for over 30 years.
Yeah.
And she said, because of us, she actually believed it could exist, and now she's found that.
Right.
Now she has someone helping her fill her reservoir.
Right, and energizing her. I mean, she even told you, she said, "I'm sorry for the times when I used to pick at you for all the lovey-dovey stuff." She now has crossed over and seen the difference between when she's in scarcity and love is like, oh, this frou-frou whatever stuff, it doesn't exist, to, oh my God, this is amazing, I love it, you know?
Yeah.
And that's also, you can actually use these elements as an indicator or as a signal for yourself of what you need to work on or where you need to be energized. There's plenty of times where I'd pay attention to my thought patterns, and I'd be ruthless towards people, or I wouldn't be compassionate. I'd be like, oh, wait, something's wrong with my compassion. I need to work on that. I need to exercise it. Or if I'm having trouble finding things that I want, I know my desire is low. Like it's in a deflated state. So I know I got to put air and water into that to fill that part back up. If I'm being too serious, I know that I need to put some humor into my life so I can calm down from that, you know? All of these things, they counterbalance each other.
Now, I've got a question for you about those things, because I understand that. I should. I'm supposed to be teaching this with you. But I figure my questions are going to help us dig and pull it back out. So I'm wondering, you know how that gray, soft, cozy, warm blanket of depression feels, and how when you start to feel that, you're like, screw it, I'm going to stay here. And then you just kind of melt down into that. Yeah. So how do you pull up out of that?
I haven't felt that in over 3 or 4 years.
No, I just felt it recently.
You know, but because I call it the two-step hustle of comfort and despair. The thing is, how despair and depression hits you is at first it hits you with the feeling of comfort of, oh, this is nice. Let me accept this. Let me trust this. Let me ease into this thing. And then before you know it, you're out of that, oh, this is nice, and like, oh, my life sucks. Everything is hard. I hate it. You know, like you can't trust that comfort that it hits you. That's why scarcity and the types of things that we get from scarcity by working on it, that edge, that ability to like challenge things, the ability to resist, the ability to like judge things and reject things that we don't want, and decide what we trust and internalize and accept and what we push away from us. In those times, how I beat depression for myself was not trusting that first step of the comfort, because I knew that was just a mask over the depression. So what I did is I resisted it. I'd push it away, you know, and I wouldn't indulge in the feelings and the narratives that would come from that. I wouldn't indulge in, oh, this is so hard, because there's a little bit of comfort there, because that means I can give up. I would look at it, I was like, I would tell myself literally, this feeling I have is the same feeling a person feels when they're out in the snow, and right before they die, they said, oh, let me go to sleep.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking about.
And that's the real thing. It's the same mechanisms. And if you can disarm that, you know, if you can stick your edge in there and say, no, I'm not accepting this, you can turn it around.
So you have to have enough wherewithal.
Awareness.
Yes. To say no.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have this, because I know I've done that, and that's what's kept me out of depression, but I wanted to make sure we explain that thoroughly, because I know I lately, because of all the stomach pains and sickness I've had, that gray blanket is really comforting. And I've had to either reach out to someone and say, help me, I need something right now. But I have to be careful who I reach out to. Right. Because if I reach out to someone that's prone to wallowing in the blanket, then I'm just going to stay in the blanket. I'm going to take on their stuff. I'm going to take on their mama's stuff. I'm going to take on their daddy's stuff. And I'm just going to lay there in my blanket and just die.
Right.
Not really, but like emotionally, I'm feeling dead.
That's how you feel.
But if I call the right people, I reach out to the right people, and then they make me laugh, or they remind me of something joyful, and it can spark, but they have to do it in a very almost neutral, happy way, so as not to just tick me off. Because when you're feeling that blanket, you also don't want to be poked with anything that's light or happy.
Well, Yeah, well, that's another thing, is when you're in a certain space, the opposite that you need is going to come across as an aggravation or a challenge, or it's something that you want to push away because we're mired in the other spot. You know, when we're depressed or when I'm serious, I don't want to hear about funny stuff. But to me, I'm like, you guys aren't taking it seriously because I'm hyper-inflated with seriousness and deflated in my humor. Or when people are depressed, they're inflated with despair and the comfort around that, and they're deflated with spirit and edge and resistance, you know? Yeah. You're tired. You don't want to face resistance. Yeah. You don't want to work. You want to just lay there, you know? And we have to resist within ourselves. We have to resist ourselves, the part that gets hijacked by these emotions, so that we can turn it around and shift back into the places that have the most meaning. Because, does that make sense?
Yeah. I was just thinking there's so many, like, going to the gym is one of those things where sometimes you just have to push yourself out of that cozy, comfort, depressed, miserable, whatever.
Right. That gray indulgence.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. When you're about to start writing a book, it's so hard. You got writer's block. It's so easy to just go do something else, but you got to push through it. When you want to lose weight, when you want to talk to that girl that just makes your heart, you know, beat fast, and you get all nervous, you got to face that. All of these are firewalls, you know. And when you feel that resistance, you know there's some meaning behind here. That's one thing that is like so important. I wish people understood. So many people, they're like, what is the meaning of life? What are we supposed to do with life? Some people, they just want to be happy. Like, that's great. But you also want your happiness to have meaning, and you also want your life to have potential. You want to have abundance of choices. So when you go through life, you're going to swing through the deflated and inflated states, and you want to have both of those working for you, so it's deepening your meaning and expanding your potential. Because that's what makes you happy. That's what makes you satisfied. You were talking about, like, what are the things that energize us going out with certain people. Certain people energize, certain people drain. Well, we've talked before in other shows that we have 3 anchors of change, which is the type of people in relationships, like you just said, but also the environment, and then our identities. There are so many times where, God, when one of the main things I tell people is when they're depressed, get out of the house. You know, It's so easy to stay in bed and, you know, put that blanket over your head and just stay in that gray little world. But get out of the house and allow yourself to be energized. You know? So
that's part of the emotional resiliency, is just pushing yourself a little bit past your resistance so that you can begin to feel a different energy.
Yeah, you want to face the resistance that keeps you from the opportunity to be energized, to be inflated, you know? So when you don't want to go see someone who you know will make you laugh, you know, face that resistance. When you don't want to write that book, or when you don't want to tell someone you love them because it's scary, face that resistance. You know, one thing that, like, I love so much from you is you pay attention to the flavors of resistance you feel. And you'll ask yourself, is this something I'm resisting because it's comfortable? Or is this something I'm resisting because I'm afraid of the meaning and the change behind it, you know, and I should go towards it?
If I find that I'm afraid of the meaning or the change, I always push through it.
Right.
Because I want what's on the other side of that. I want that extra flavor in my life. I know years ago that often happened when it was church, and I was like, I don't want to go. But I would go, and just the community and the singing, and there'd always be something that would shift whatever was inside me.
Right.
Yeah, and so then, because I pushed through the resistance, I got this enormous, like, lifting. And it seems like we get resistance. I don't know. I get these wonderful ideas. Like, it seems like we get resistance when something better is coming.
Right.
Like, this is the image I just got when I said that. When I said, I thought of changing a car tire. There's resistance trying to break the lugs off the thing so you can take the tire off the... I know how to do it. I cannot say all the names right now.
You're fine.
So when you break the lugs off, there's resistance to that. But when you take the lugs off, you put on the new tire. Now you're better. Right. You have the new tire. It's not flat anymore.
Exactly.
It just took some resistance.
Same thing, cleaning the house.
Yeah.
That's how, yeah, but that was a rejection, the repulsion. I don't want to do that.
Can we hire somebody for that?
Well, the thing is, when you do that, you leverage, and then you lose that that you get afterwards when you pass through and do it yourself. You know, certain things you can do that because it's not a big deal. You're getting your meaning from other things.
Mm-hmm.
So, cleaning your house is low on the priority compared to getting out of depression.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And, I want people to understand that behind every single one of those facing resistance is that oomph, that
mm-hmm.
swelling, that rising of, oh, I did this and I'm thankful for it.
Well, that would be like me and you.
Yeah.
We ran into a lot of resistance in the beginning.
Mm.
And even now there'll be times where I'm feeling a certain way, or I'm like, well, just talk to him. Just talk. And I'm like, no, I don't want to. I'm just going to sit here and brood.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not me.
Yeah.
So as soon as I hear in my head, no, I'm just going to sit here and brood, I'm like, oh, screw this. I am not going to sit here and brood.
Yeah.
I need to talk to him because I want my relationship. I want this to be healthy. I want to be doing all the things I tell other people to do in their relationships. I don't want to be that person who tells them, but then I don't do it.
Right.
I don't want to be a do as I say, not as I do.
Right.
I want to be a do as I do.
Well, it's because we face the resistance to the meaning, or the resistance in the way of the meaning.
Because there's been plenty of times I sit on the couch and whatever thing could be going on, and I just look at you and I'm like, ugh. Like I don't want to talk. No, it's not that I'm mad at you. It's just that for some reason I've had an emotional shutdown. Maybe you're watching hockey and this just happened. So like you're watching hockey and you get all excited or mad and you're cussing at the TV or jumping up and down because you're excited, and it frightens me because it's just too much. And so I pull back in. And then I sit there and I notice I'm all like inside myself. And so I have to go, wait a second, this isn't healthy. 1, I'm not talking to him. 2, I'm miserable. 3, I'm going to sound like my mom if I don't do something because she never would speak out. Mm-hmm. So I say, hey, David, it bothers me when you jump up like that, or it bothers me when you use that particular word when you're yelling at the hockey guy or whatever. And then we were able to talk about it and it's okay.
Right. Well, that's another thing is communicating your shutdown states with your partner, knowing what is it that drains you, what energizes you, but also being aware of the signals from your body. Because your body, when it starts to get into places where it shuts down, first it'll whisper to you. It sounds like, hey, this is a little weird, But then when it gets loud, it's already too late. You're already shut down. So there's strategies we can employ, awareness we can employ, so that we don't fall into that point of no return. Mm-hmm. It's much easier to energize yourself when you're half deflated than when you're fully deflated. We talk a lot with women in their awareness of their sexuality, of what they like and don't like. So they speak up before it gets to that point of no return and their sexuality shuts down. Because the last thing you want is that long-term shutdown. And it's the same thing for every single element. You don't want long-term shutdown in any of these things. I'd hate it if I lost my desire for life. That would be my motivation and passion. My intensity. I'd hate that. I'd feel like a hollow person on the inside. And it's the same thing for like hope. I knew what it's like to have no hope, to just feel like, I'm stuck. And the only thing I had, like for me, my edge is easy. Like I always had fire. I've always been a person who, no matter how bad it gets, I'm going to dig my way out. I don't care if I'm in hell. I will take over hell, and then I will turn it into heaven. So for me, abundance has been harder. I've had to work so hard to energize the abundant things, the pleasurable things. I didn't even know how to feel pleasure. I didn't understand it. I felt like it was something out of my grasp because it had been deflated in me. And because of our lives together and the work that I've been doing over these years, it comes much easier, So my capacity, my cup for those things, my connection to those things.
Like having fun.
Yeah. Being a kid again, doing little goofy things and making little videos with you or audios and just singing and doing whatever goofy stuff we want to do, or dancing around in the grocery store,
Oh, that was fun. You were a little embarrassed, I could tell.
Well, that time. But You know, like it's nice, and you want those things to be a part of your life.
So what we're saying to people is, as they're beginning to get deflated, let's not even go to as. Let's assume they're in a good space right now, and they're not deflated. So while they're in this good space, what would you suggest they do so they can build that reservoir so they have that when they do feel deflated?
Well, you want to exercise the amazing things that you love so much and that you want so much when you are deflated. You know, if you're feeling normal, take a little bit of time, slow down, and appreciate just a little bit more. I'm not saying a big, huge thing. You know, just a little small steps. You know, take an extra step. If you're normal and your day is going by, it's just, you know, your normal stuff, spend a little bit of time to think about other things you might want. Add them into your life. You know, we could, you know, light a candle here. That'll make the smell a little bit better. You know, it's nice. It's a small little thing. Let's add it in. It energizes. You know, it adds to the room. It adds to that balloon. So you always want to be doing it in small ways. Make it a part of your practice, adding to the things that blow up that balloon, that inflate it. So you stretch. Okay. You want to stretch. So when you're feeling normal and feeling nice, stretch it out. When you're in the dumps, in the mud, dig down deep. You know, wintertime you work on your roots. Summertime you expand your balloon. You know.
Mark Cohn has a song called "Dig Down Deep." And he talks about going below the surface and finding out what's really going on, and then waking up. He's like, there are so many people walking around asleep, but I'm sitting here with you, and I want to feel everything that we can feel. So let's dig down deep. Let's go below the surface. Let's stay awake and see what we've got. Right. And to me, it's like the stuff below the surface is what brings us back around, and that stuff below the surface is what gives us that joy. So if we can label what we have below the surface that makes us happy, then we can tap into that.
Right. And even if you can't feel it, you can exercise it.
Right.
You know, because you get below what's blocking you. Like, there are things in my life I deal with that shift me, that will really quickly drain me or energize me, and I have to go through extreme measures to get down deep and get below it, where I have things where it snuffed out my ability to feel love. And I just got down below it and I said, even if I can't feel this love right now, I'm going to give it. And I'll give it invisibly. And I would push and I would push. And I'm talking for hours I would do this, pushing and pushing until the smallest trickle of feeling would come. And then I'd nurse and I'd tend to that little feeling and bring it up just a little bit more, just a little bit more. I wouldn't get caught up in how it felt and indulge in that. I would still be focused on digging while appreciating that feeling I was having. There's a difference between indulging in what you're feeling, which is great. You know, you want to savor it, you want to enjoy it, but also working to energize and bring about that feeling, you know.
Okay, so since you're more work inside, and I get a lot of energy from people. So I know if I'm feeling really bad, but for some reason I'm outside around people, I tend to begin to feel better. Right. Even if it's at the darn grocery store, which I swear is not my favorite place to go, besides what people seem to think. I'll see someone or something, and they'll have something cute on or have a sweet smile. And if I just say, oh, your smile is really sweet, or I love your earrings, then when they light up to tell me thank you, that pulls me up a little more out of my deflation.
Right. So you're more extroverted than I am. Like, for me, people are usually a burden or a stress. They're not really energizing me. But for you, they energize you. And you want to know what are your natural preferences. Work with your strengths. Work with your chemistry. We're all people with different chemistry because all these different elements we have are at different levels, and they're having different levels of communication with each other. So you want to work with what's best for you, you know. At the same time, don't limit yourself, though. You want to keep expanding your comfort zones. Like, one of the best things I ever did was focus on expanding and energizing the things that I was not good at, which were deflated. You want to do that, but you want it to kind of be like a champagne pyramid where you're pouring down things that come easy to you so it splashes and then lifts up the other things as well, you know.
I was just thinking, one of the things that I've always done to get out or to feel less. No, I'm going to take it back a step.
Okay.
If we were teaching this in a workshop, one of the practical things I would have someone do, is to maybe they could take words. They cut words off of a magazine, and they glue it to a piece of poster board, words that are uplifting for them.
Right.
So instead of having just a blank poster board which does nothing for lifting them, they've got all these words like kindness, compassion, joy, gratitude, hope, promise, like these things, and that begins to fill it up. It's the same thing as like if each one of those were a breath or a drop of water, and you put that in the balloon, it helps it to expand some.
Definitely. I mean, personally, I have what I call the DAG circuit, which is desire, appreciation, gratification, all that stuff I keep mentioning. Those are actually anchored into my hand. Like on my right hand, my thumb is desire. Appreciation is my index finger. All these things are anchored to my fingers. And hope and humor are like my palm. So when I close them, I'm feeling them all. I'm remembering them all. And I've done this for years, so it's kind of ingrained in me, there's connections of, okay, when I think of this finger, it's going to think about desire, you know. So like your poster board, except I'm carrying it around in my hands all the time. You know, my left hand is all the scarcity stuff, all the edge stuff, you know, which is being strong, my fire. So when I know I'm dealing with scarcity, I'm clenching my left hand and thinking about all the things that I need. I'm reminded, and I carry it with me always. And then when I put them together, that's meaning for me. So I know that the joining of my left hand, which is the scarcity and challenge, and my right hand, which is love and abundance, when they come together, when they harmonize together, that's where meaning is created. So when I'm going through these things, naturally my hands are going to clench because I'm stressed, I'm going through stuff. It reminds me, you know.
That's beautiful. So in a way it's kind of like the emotional freedom technique or tapping, or even like an NLP sort of thing.
Well, yeah, it's like an NLP anchor. Yeah.
Okay.
Except, you know, minus all the weird whatever stuff that they do. So, but yeah, and that I carry that with me always.
Okay. Well, I know for me, like, the only thing I really have for resiliency is what I've had since I was a little girl. Well, it's not the only thing, but it's like my main thing that I've had since I was a little girl. When all of the abuse first started, when my soul fractured, I went into the arms of Jesus, and he held me. And so I had that archetype as my hope, because I kept feeling him whisper to me, it will get better, it will get better, it will get better. And whether or not people want to, you know, whatever people want to believe about Jesus or anything, there is the archetype. And that archetype is what helped me to get to the place where I could begin building more resiliency. And even as a little child, if I went out to the earth and I sat by a river or I played with rocks, I began to feel better. I could feel peace within myself, and that would help pull me out. That would give me hope. I would lay on the ground underneath the sky and stare at it and go, one day it's going to be better. I can feel this. I know this. I have hope in that sky above me, which is why my name is Skye.
Exactly. These are, whether they're elements, whether they're archetypes, they're symbols, you know, and they represent things. So you want to have things in your life that represent these things because they will help you energize and reconnect with them, whether it's certain people, whether it's a certain space, land, you know.
Ireland.
Yeah, they all represent and carry certain things that energize us. Just like there's certain things that drain us, you know, that represent. And we want to wean ourselves away from the things that drain us, especially the gray indulgences that trick us with comfort, and then move to the things that represent what energizes us.
Well, also like me changing the way I dressed, because through high school and, up until maybe 3 years before I met you, all I wore were either dark, like black, brown, gray, or earth tones. I wore nothing bright. I hated anything bright. I didn't want to stand out. And, I mean, I'm wearing a bright pink tank top right now.
Right. You're feminine and your pink hair. Your femininity has inflated and increased and energized from being with me. Well, actually, from healing for you, you know. And that's the thing, like, these things that we're talking about, you can look at people and see what they're drained in. You can see people who are so analytical that it hurts to listen to them because they're kind of drained of emotions. Or people that are so happy that they energize you, they're always cheerful, you know. Or people that are so trustworthy and sincere that they move you. Mm-hmm. You can look into someone's face and you can feel what they're off on and what they're abundant in, you know. And that's so amazing to me. That's how I know these things are so real. You know, it's almost like a video game for me where I can feel all my different levels. I'm like, okay, what's going on with this? Let me feel this real quick. I can look at my face in the mirror, and it's like, oh, I can see my edges developed. I don't look like a baby-faced kid anymore. You know, I've grown. And that's where maturity is in a lot of ways, is developing that edge, developing these other things, and then not just having them, but maturing them, you know?
You know, I have a client who has a definite edge, very edgy human. And in the past year of working with me, the edge is softened.
Right.
And this feminine beauty is just like, poof, blown, just gorgeous out of her. Like, I even stalked her today when she was getting her pedicure. Well, that's what happens when you post where you are on Facebook.
Oh, Lord.
But she was happy about it. She didn't seem to be upset that I showed up. But she won't mind me talking about her. The only reason I am, because she is very, very vocal about the work she's done with me, and she's given me ultimate permission to talk about her. I still won't mention her name. But she had such an edge that I remember you even would say she was spiky.
Yeah, because that's an out-of-balance edge. That's not, because a lot of that was not edge. It was actually spikiness, which is, there's other things that go on in scarcity that you want to wean yourself away from, which is bitterness, resentment, brittleness, spikiness. These are all things that are in the environment of winter and deflation, but are not filled with meaning and character. It's these other things that are the mature edge, you know. And then she has actually, her edge has actually gotten better because she's gained this abundance and softness and femininity. She's more balanced. Now she's using her voice more. She'll say no to people. Before, people in that other space, they get spiky and for little things, but when it came down to her meaning, their meaning and spirit, they'd accept and let people walk all over them, which would be what made them spiky. You know? And
she doesn't do that. That's why I wanted you to explain the edge.
Right.
Because we have a version of the edge that we're taught, but you're not talking about it like that. And so I used her as an example.
No, I'm so glad you did, because an edge is not wearing a leather motorcycle jacket and, being whatever outlaw version people see on TV. We're like, oh, that's edgy, that's dark. Wearing a spike collar and listening to heavy metal does not mean you have an edge. It means that I don't know what it means.
It means you have good taste in music.
Sure. And then, so this edge thing that we're talking about, let's really break it down.
Okay.
It's your ability to face rejection, your ability to face challenge, your ability to face resistance and to resist.
So to me, what you're saying is the edge is actually your ability of your resiliency as a human.
Your ability to stand up for yourself and stand up for what you believe in.
To not get pushed down.
Right. Yeah, to keep moving forward.
Like a rubber band.
Well, that's to snap back. So resiliency is your ability to snap back to your normal, but your edge is your ability to push through the things that would hold you back and bring you down.
Those comfort zones, those fears, those insecurities, whatever it happens to be that's holding you back.
Right, oppression, all these things.
Well, she was afraid I wouldn't even see her as a client. She thought she was too messed up, and she was not.
Right.
She had just been given some bad information by psychiatrists for a number of years.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing is, like, edges, sometimes you have to have an edge to get to abundance. Like, it takes just as much edge to take a leap of faith and trust someone as it does to stand up and resist someone. Sometimes it's easier to resist someone who's in your face they compare to trusting someone and being vulnerable, you know? It's all different for different people.
Well, and a lot of people, and I know I'm speaking mainly for myself and the few women that I've worked with, I've seen where it's a harder time to stand up to someone especially someone who's an authority.
Yeah.
And for a woman, a lot of times the husband takes a place of someone, quote, in authority, and so it's harder for her to stand up. And we see too many people in domestic violence situations, and they can't stand up.
Well,
or they're having a hard time standing up.
Right.
Because they've been beat down so much, so now they need that resiliency that they're in a very scarce place.
Right. So they need people around them who are in abundance of a good relationship to be energized and remember what that feels like. And at the same time, they need more edge within themselves to stand up to these people and gain self-authority. Because when we come into this world, we're kind of blank slates. We depend on other people to inform us of how this world works, what's going on outside our little bubble, because we're small, we're still gaining our senses. So our authority is small, that balloon. We have to expand the balloon of our self-authority, you know, and that's what we do by facing these things, facing people who would say, no, you're wrong, and instead risking ourselves and exploring to see what really is true, what is on the other side. You know, it's so easy to be the jailed and to lock ourselves in this cage that other people have created, and they say, oh, it's dangerous outside there. You'll never make it on your own. You need me. But then you have that edge to say, you know what, I'm going to go outside in that place that you say is dangerous. I'm going to leave this cage of safe, and spread my wings and fly. I'll test and risk it myself and see if my wings can hold me. And guess what they do? That's one of the things when we married, I said I would never clip your wings. I would never take away your self-authority. I would never take away your ability to go out and explore and invest in yourself, you know. So that's how we energize that part. We protect that part of ourselves. And while we'll push each other like, okay, it's being too comfortable, we just want to stay in our little space together and in our little beautiful home, but no, we got to get out there. We're going to take trips. We're going to meet these people and speak and reach out. We're going to go to protests. You know, we expand, we risk, we're vulnerable because we expand ourselves for meaning, for that potential.
Well, and I find that if I don't expand myself, then I fall back into that cage that I created to where I can hide with my little gray blanket.
Yeah, well, the balloon shrinks, you know. It's no longer being stretched, so it retracts. You know, that's why we always have to be stretching. And that's why we feel satisfied and happy when we are stretching, because we're expanding who we are. If you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards, you know.
Yeah. I guess this, thinking about the last big resistance I had was when I decided I wanted to call my dad from France.
Oh, okay.
And it was his birthday. He was turning 70. And do you remember me sitting on the couch, and we didn't even leave the flat that day. It was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon when I finally called, because it would have been 8 for him in Florida.
Right.
Ooh, that was some serious resistance. But I stood up. I stayed in my self-authority, even as he started quizzing me about, how are you in Europe? Did you take time off work? What about your husband? You're married now, right? Like, he went through all those things that normally would make me feel like a little child again. And I just said what I had to say. I told him happy birthday, and when he hurried to rush to get off the phone, I said, I love you, and hung up the phone, and I remember such a release.
Right.
Such a release, because now I don't have any anger for him. I have nothing. There's no love. There's no hate. There's nothing. Like, I was able to release because I pushed through my resistance.
Right.
And had you there as part of my support, and then pulled up that well of support that I've had from so many people, so many of myself coming up with, I'm not so bad, I'm this, I'm that, I can do this, and then just push through.
Right. So let's kind of summarize what everything we've brought to these people is. You want to work on these things that give us these reservoirs, that give us these roots, that energize us when we need them so that we can stand up for them. And we want to have people around us that energize us and represent those things we most want in our lives so that we can remember what it feels like when times are hard and work on those things within ourselves when things are easy. Let's see what else. Meaning. We want to
find meaning.
Yeah, because the thing is, what is your motivation for facing these tough things? They're so hard, and if it's just a motivation of I don't want to feel like this anymore, or I want, this is too hard, you're not going to really get past it so much. It's not until you have these deep motivations of I want something different, or this means too much for me to give up.
Well, like going to the Women's March.
Right.
What I went to march for was too important for me to give up. So I pushed through my resistance, because I had a lot of resistance about going, because I was just scared of what could happen.
Right, yeah. So we want to find the right motivations to push us through the resistance. And we don't want to demonize the resistance as this thing that we're supposed to avoid. Look forward to what's behind that door. The door may be on fire. It may burn your hand when you grab hold of it. But God, when you open that thing and get through, it feels so good. I want people to remember what it feels like when they open that door, and to take that with them so they know when they're in the worst times that there's a ceiling to this bad time. If I can get past the ceiling of this bad time, I'm going to open up into something that expands me, that raises my ceiling of my abundance. And that's a beautiful thing. And when you know how the pattern goes, you can actually see in your body, like, okay, I'm going to have 2 days of this, then 1 day of this. I'm going to be able to get my bearings. I'm going to dive back into it. 3 days later, I'm going to have a week of easy coasting. Let me work on this. You can feel in your body what's going on in your individual rhythms.
You always seem to know when I'm about to do it.
Yeah, well, because I pay attention to your rhythms. I know part of my skill is to map these things out. I feel them. I feel how they work. I feel how they connect, like millions of little energetic blocks. And I can tell when things are going to change and when they're going to shift, because I remember. I don't lose sight of them when I shift over.
That's the thing, is not losing sight of those victories.
Yeah.
Basically, because every time you hit the resistance, you push through, you get on the other side, that's a victory.
Yeah, definitely.
You pulled it up, you managed to get it through. Woo!
Yeah, and you gain that wisdom. The wisdom is that remembering. So when you get back in the wintertime, your body's going to be like, oh, that was nothing. You suck. You can't do this. That didn't mean anything. You were just, your body will lie to you. It will tell you because it's in the bad place, So everything that you think is tainted by that. But if you have the wisdom of all these past victories, you can say, oh, okay, that's just my body being retarded right now. Excuse me. That's my body just being...
Yeah, that's exactly what that word means.
Oh, okay.
It's just been used as a bad word.
I just don't want to offend anybody. But, yeah, that's your body is being in the grips of this other thing, so you can't trust that. You have to push it away and stand up to it and push through. Just like your dad saying, oh, you'll never be this. You stood up to it and you showed differently. You have to be the older brother or the adult for your body in those times of saying, I know you're feeling this way because you're locked in this place, but I'm going to show you what happens when we walk through it. And then your body's going to uplift and be like, oh, God, you were right. And that's when you're like, oh, I'm so glad I went to the gym. Oh, I'm so glad I pushed through and wrote this book. Oh, I'm so glad I pushed through and met this person, Those are the moments you cherish that become the memories of your life that mean so much to you.
You're right. Like flying up here to meet you.
Yeah. And then we're not hollow people, Our balloons are filled, and they're not just these small little things. We want huge balloons, huge celebrations.
Well, remember, I was nervous about going down and meeting Nicole in Florida. And then... it was the best thing.
Right.
I mean, I just grabbed her. I couldn't stand to let go. I hated leaving. Yeah.
I bet every single person we talk to, there's going to be some part in their life where they say, God, this was so hard. I didn't think I was going to do it, but I was so glad I did.
Yeah, Omega. Moving from Georgia to Omega.
Yeah.
Living in a tent.
Yeah, and the bigger it is, the more resistance you face.
Yeah.
Nowadays, for me, when I find those things, I get so excited because I know on the other side of this coin is going to be an amazing uplift. I'm like, all right, this is the worst thing I've ever faced in my life. Bring it on. I'm happy about it.
I can push through and I can get to the other side.
Yeah, you're not going to break me. I'm going to come through stronger than ever before. And I have so much fire when I get into that thing, I burn through the thing. I don't care,
Yeah.
And that's what I want other people to be. That's what you are. And people see that in our eyes. They see the fire, and they see the happiness. They see the strength. And I want to be able to see that in other people's eyes.
I want to see that in everybody else's eyes.
Yeah.
I want to see the love.
Yeah.
I want to see that their self-authority is there and that they can do this. And I want to point out that what we keep talking about is that we are reaching out to other people.
Right.
So when you feel deflated, find someone that you reach out to that can help re-inflate you, that can point out you're good, you're intelligent, you're beautiful, all of those things that you need to hear, and that can do it honestly and with authenticity.
Yeah, find your energizers.
Yeah, I think that's very important. Well, you can find David and I at skyeburns.com.
Mm-hmm.
SKYEBURNS, and we have a Facebook page. It's Skye and David, and it's the Twin Flame Team. So if you have to look for it on Facebook, you can type in Skye and David or the Twin Flame Team, and you should find us. And you can also find out about yenradiotv.com. And you've been listening to the Twin Flame Team with Skye Burns Dunn and David Dunn on Yen Radio TV. Have a great night, y'all.
See ya.